I am joined by Michał Baranowski, Director of the German Marshall Fund of the United States in Warsaw. Good afternoon, sir. Delighted to have you with us.
Great to be with you.
So, Ukraine was the main theme of the summit. Let me ask you about what has been established. Do you think that the summit was a success for Ukraine, or perhaps Volodymyr Zelensky has the right to be a little disappointed?
So I have a pleasure of joining you from Washington, D.C. Despite being normally placed in Warsaw, I've been able to watch the summit from very close up. And of course, this is a very big summit when it comes to support for Ukraine. Not only Ukraine is mentioned in the declaration as having an irreversible path toward the alliance, perhaps even more importantly, there was a package of support, military support for Ukraine, including $43 billion over the next year, including 5 Patriot batteries, including new headquarters in Germany that will support transformation of Ukrainian military. So these are all very good developments. At the same time, for the Ukrainian side, key issues were not addressed by the summit. Number one, there was, of course, no invitation for Ukraine to join the alliance, and that's a priority for Ukrainian government. And the second, perhaps even more important development, or lack of it, in the current state of the war is Ukraine's inability to target the military installations deeper inside Russia, which is key to protect Ukrainian cities, just as we saw a few days ago with the bombing of Children's Hospital in Kiev. And that was something that Ukraine was not allowed in many ways to do by the alliance, or was not given capabilities to do by the alliance at this point.
Right. However, some individual countries, such as Great Britain, already greenlit this action, right? They said that Ukraine can use, for instance, Storm Shadow missiles to target targets on the Russian territory.
So that is true. At the same time, the most important ally in this context is the United States, given the long-range ATACMS that U.S. is delivering as well. But it's not only about having the missiles. Ukraine also needs targeting, and that is something that only allies can help Ukraine with. It's not enough to know that where a given airport is, or another military target. It is important to know what is going on at that time for Ukraine to be able to strike it effectively.
Right, sir. And since your organization works in the spirit of the Marshall Fund, let me ask you about recovery efforts. So do you think that there will be some additional packages to help Ukraine recover, as the cost of the recovery is estimated at hundreds of billions of dollars?
So the NATO summit comes at the end of about a month-long diplomatic offensive, so to say, by the Ukrainian side and the West more broadly. And that has started at the beginning of June with the Ukraine Recovery Conference in Berlin, then G7 summit in Italy. And those were the meetings that brought forward the most important decisions when it comes to recovery, including a $50 billion fund that will be a loan to Ukraine, but it will be used from the profits coming from the Russian frozen assets. So Ukraine is getting $50 billion for recovery and additional $43 billion for military aid coming from the NATO summit. So very substantial additional aid to Ukraine just over the last month, in addition to what United States has green-lighted about a month and a half earlier with $61 billion of military and economic aid done in a bilateral basis. So a lot of money for both military and reconstruction purposes for Ukraine.
So now let's turn for a minute towards the US. It is, of course, one of the most prominent members of the alliance, and also Joe Biden was hosting this summit. And he said that Russia has turned its economy into a war economy and that the West should consider doing the same. Do you agree with the statement? And what would that entail?
So Russia has put, as President Biden said, all of the resources at the service of its military, and that shows determination on one hand, but it also shows that Russia cannot continue this forever, and if this war continues, Russia will suffer irreversible consequences for its own economy. At this moment, West doesn't need to do even that much. We just need to ramp up our military, our defense production. We are by order of magnitudes bigger in economic sense than that Russia is. But we are not there yet. We are not, even though our size is so much bigger, even though we have such much greater economic potential, we are not producing. Russia is outproducing us, not only when it comes to Ukraine's defense needs, but also when it comes to the defense needs of the alliance members. And that's what absolutely needs to change, because it's up to our defense capabilities. That's the key asset that provides the necessary deterrence against Russian threat, and frankly, threat coming from all other adversaries as well.
And just to continue on the American topic, the domestic situation in the US was sort of diverting attention from the summit a little bit. So what is your view on the situation in the US, on Joe Biden? Do you think that from his perspective, the summit was a success?
Well, I would say that the domestic situation in the US was the main topic of the conversations in the corridors. So it's very polite of you, but I would say that this is a bit of an understatement, that it was diverting the attention. The attention of the allies is very much on the future of US leadership within NATO, on the future of Biden campaign and Biden's presidency, and what it could mean come November, given that right now Donald Trump is cruising toward victory. At the moment, the polls, both nationally and in the key swing states, are showing that his support is only growing. So the summit was a very good, necessary step to also show leadership of President Biden. But in the background, we've had a couple gaffes, including during the closing press conference with President Zelensky, that put question marks. I think no one was impolite to say it in public, but in private, everyone is concerned about what will the campaign look like of President Biden, given the debate performance and given his state of health, as everyone can see.
Right. Addressing President Zelensky as President Putin was quite unfortunate indeed. But let me turn to one other topic I wanted to discuss, namely China. China has been labeled a decisive enabler by NATO, enabler of Russia's war efforts. So do you think that this was justified, and what will be some of the consequences of this joint communique?
Well, the fact that such a strong statement made it to the communique shows the level of consensus, which is a full consensus, that China is a real threat to the alliance, not in the Indo-Pacific theater that we often talk about China. It's not about Chinese threats to Taiwan. It's about Chinese direct help to Russia, giving Russia semiconductors, giving Russia dual-use technology, dual between civilian and military uses, and there is a consensus that without Chinese support, Russia would not be able to wage the war at the level that it's waging it right now against Ukraine. That's why it's China who has entered the European and North Atlantic treaties organization's territory, and that's why there is such a strong statement showing China as a threat. And really, between the lines, it's a signal to China that it could face consequences, including sanctions, something that in the background, in the corridors, has been discussed for a long while, and something that could be very detrimental to Chinese economy.
So, and my last question, and I would ask you for a brief answer, is that it has been announced that U.S. weapons will be deployed, long-range weapons will be deployed to Germany starting in 2026. Shall we be worried, or is it just a part of the deterrence strategy?
No, I think having longer range weapons, American weapons in Europe is good for us because that provides the deterrence. We need to gear up. We need to get as much of capabilities here in our countries, so Russia understands very well the cost of potential aggression also against NATO territory. So it never happens. So we never have to use these weapons.
Michał Baranowski, German Marshall Fund of the United States. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Much appreciated.
It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much.